So I know we've spoken about meditation techniques and methods before.
Mhm.
You've covered that many times, but just as to cover it again, maybe it'll become clearer to others. What do you think about common meditation methods or techniques, such as, I don't really want to mention other people's names or techniques, but
So in general, like contemporary
yeah,
meditation techniques.
when you Google Buddhism and meditation, the
Right,
first thing that comes up.
Well, that's the point that we've been making in all the previous talks on meditation. Really, it's you cannot possibly do those practices without the implicit view behind it. View that certain performance, observance, mechanical concentration, surrender to the perception will somehow magically transcend you into the sphere of knowledge. That is implicit. So some people might really have their view really developed, some people might not have it so firmly developed, but if you think that meditation technique can somehow result in some knowledge through itself, means you're partaking in that view, and that's why it's completely wrong. So really, meditation technique is not so much, well, it is obviously about the technique you do, but it's really, what's even more important is the view you have behind it. So when we talk about meditation is not a method, in other words, regarding things as a method is your view. So that's why, like, when I remember in the past, sometimes I explained this to people, and then it was like, okay, so your method is the no method. It's like, no, that's not what I'm saying. Because they would think that denial of the methods basically, they don't think. They take denial or refusal of the methods, they take it as another method. So that's what I mean. It's on the level of how you take things that you do. What is the implicit view? What do you believe those things can result in? That's where the problem is. And that problem, sure, is made worse when you blindly just follow a technique. As I said, it already implies that view, and now you're just doubling down on it. Through really not thinking for yourself, but the opposite, trying to avoid all the thinking and just concentrate through watching your nostrils or I don't know, whatever else contemporary meditation might be making you do. So it's the view behind you want to see. That am I holding a view that if I sit and concentrate on the nostrils, I will have an experience of a special kind that will somehow result in knowledge or be the knowledge? And that's already a wrong view. That's already basically a factor of silabbataparamasa. My virtue, my duty, if I adhere to it, will result in wisdom and liberation. And it's the first fetter, because of which you will not get wisdom and liberation. So usually methods and practices are within that fetter. And that's why people would often be quite touchy about it as well, if somebody criticizes their meditation method. Even if criticism is wrong. Say somebody criticizes unjustly some method. Are you emotionally feeling defensive? Means there is no dispassion there. So it's how you take things, how you regard them, what you assume behind them. So the point is then not so much about what you do. Well, what you do is you keep the precepts, of course. You restrain your senses, your eye, your nose, and so on. You're devoted to wakefulness, as the Buddha would say. So try to not lapse, basically. Try to not lose the sight of the context of your situation. That's already a form of samadhi. So now if you really want to develop the samadhi that pertains to liberation, well, you need the right view. As Samadhi Sutta says, there is no samadhi without the right view. So it doesn't mean you shouldn't try, but what you want to understand is that it's not about I'll try this technique or try that technique. It's about I must try to basically uproot my assumption of technique resulting in knowledge and instead see a direct way to knowledge whereby I will know how to develop it and pursue it. So that's why it's always like he knows that he knows for a Sotapanna, for people who develop understanding. It's not like, oh, I watched my nostrils, then I had this super calming experience, it was just out of this world, and that's my knowledge. No, that's just a novelty experience. Knowledge is that which you understand, that you know how it comes about. That's what we say. You know the origin, you know the danger, you know the escape, you know the cessation, all these things. It means you fully understand it. There is no chance there or magical belief that, oh, maybe, hopefully it will happen like this or happen like that. When I concentrate on this, hopefully this will arise. No. You know exactly. If you attend to these things, this is where the mind is heading. If you don't attend to these things, this is where the mind is heading. That's where the clarity of awareness and mindfulness is basically what Samadhi is. Composing that same mindfulness that you have. But that will be impossible for you to do for as long as you don't abandon the view of a method that I just described. If you still, on a level of a view, assume or hold an assumption that if you go through the right motions or attend to right things, the knowledge will happen to you, that's why it won't happen to you. The only way for knowledge to happen to you is to understand what knowledge is and then to develop it through your own effort.
So let's say that a person is doing, he comes across mindfulness of breathing, but he doesn't have that view that if I do this breathing step-by-step technique, breathing in 10 seconds and breathing out 10 seconds, whatever the technique might be, he doesn't have the view that it will lead to magical insight, or just out of the blue he's gonna be liberated.
Well, he doesn't need to have such a coarse view. I wasn't alluding at that. All you need to do is not know where the place of mindfulness of breathing is, what it does, and you won't be doing it rightly. That's why Anapanasati is taught to those with the right view. To get rid of the remaining asavas and kilesas. So if you don't have the right view, you have no Anapanasati nor basis for Anapanasati.
So, but then I consider, well, I don't have the right view, but here's this Anapanasati, so let me try do it.
Yeah. Well, it will be impossible for you to do it without the implicit view of a method behind. And that's why you will not be able to do it rightly. When I say it will be impossible for you to do it without implicit view of the method, in other words, I'm saying it's impossible for you to do it without your silabbataparamasa. So if you want to even try Anapanasati rightly, get the right view, as in abandon silabbataparamasa. That's why that is the first factor that's abandoned. One of the first three factors that is abandoned for Sotapanna. And that's why, yes, there are no methods for him, because he sees directly what path to Nibbana is. Not in a mystical manner, not in some magical transcendental kind of outcome of certain practices. No, he understands. If I abstain from this and cultivate this, my mind will be liberated, as clear as a day. Now, he might be lazy and negligent and not choose to abstain from things sufficiently enough, so he might not become an arahant in this life, but nevertheless, he knows. And he knows that he knows. So all the previous talks that we did about the method and techniques, just bundle all that into silabbataparamasa, because that's what it is, practically speaking.
But that method, that technique, that fetter calms me down. And I'm not, doing anything bad. I'm not drinking, I'm keeping the precepts, whatever.
Right.
I'm a good person.
Yeah.
So it calms me down. That method, which is
great.
fetter.
If you want to be a good putujana, you can do methods, no problem. But we're not talking about that. We're talking about arahantship. So if you want to be a calm, good person that doesn't drink and go out and calms through concentrating on your nostrils, or you can do any concentration and calming and breathing technique and psychotherapy or whatever. It's going to make you a better worldly person. It's not going to free you from the world. So don't conflate the two, and then you can decide for yourself what you want to do. But that's what I'm saying. The worst is when you think you can have it both ways. Oh, I know I don't know, I know I don't have a reference for what truly calm mind is, what truly liberated mind is, but this suits me, this meditation suits me, and I will do it, and I will also kind of implicitly believe that it is bringing me closer to Nibbana, although I have no reference point whatsoever. That's nothing other than wishful thinking. And again, you can do it if you want, but it's actually, if you realize for yourself, actually that's quite a perilous thing to perpetuate in my mind. It is just wishful thinking.
So what about doing a technique? Now that you've said that to me, so I still do my technique, but I know that I'm not free from suffering. So I'll keep doing my calming technique of breathing. I know that I'm not free from suffering. I know that I don't have right view, so I'll keep an open mind.
I mean, yeah, you have to start somewhere, I suppose. But see, your start there is not with the technique you're doing. Your start there is with what you just heard, I'm telling you.
Right.
In other words, even if you had no technique, whatever you were doing on account of practice was your technique, so to speak, even if it wasn't very formally defined. Like, you don't need to do anything to be within the fetter of virtue and duty. The duty of observance, the duty of concentration, the duty of my Sila, and so on. You are within it. So it's not about finding the least harmful technique or something like that. No, it's about actually hearing the instruction. They will make you think, like basically in the context above your technique. Oh, so whatever I'm doing is a technique, but how am I regarding it? What is my view behind it? So even if you choose now, after you heard me, what I just said to you, if you choose to adhere to your technique, well, okay, maybe you still don't have faith in what I said, so you're doubtful, but at least use that. Okay, so let me then think, what are my hopes, assumptions, implications behind the technique I'm doing? What are my thoughts in regard to this? What am I hoping to achieve? Like, do I even know what my goal is of my own meditation? Or I just sort of decided, as the day goes by, and depending on how I feel that time. Do I know the outcome? Do I have the true measure of wholesome calmness? Or am I just calm in the same sense you're calm after you wake up after a full night of sleep? Or am I calm because my mind cannot be perturbed by suffering and anything that comes through the senses because I'm in control of my senses? Which calmness is it? Am I calm because I've basically surrounded myself with a soothing environment that never challenges me, never disturbs my senses? There is no heat, cold, insects, other people, voices, sounds, noises. Or am I calm because all of these things, when they arise, I am unmoved by those things? Am I precious about my meditation time? Like, I must have my safe space where nobody will disturb me so I can sit and concentrate because there is no other way I can concentrate? Or I can concentrate in any given scenario, even if I end up in a hospital, immobile, in a cast, I can't move, surrounded by 50 other patients. Because that's basically where your life is heading. Destruction. So you will not be able to exercise influence over your environment and circumstances for much longer, really. So if your meditation is always dependent on the right circumstances, that's not meditation. That's literally just soothing and covering up the wound without actually treating it.
So let's say, so I was doing a meditation technique. Now I've heard what you say, and I abandoned that technique of breathing.
Okay, so what do you do now?
Exactly. So now I'm trying to find out what is right view.
Yeah.
So I need to find out what is right view. How do I get it? What is this? Where do I start?
Yeah.
What would be your...
Well, you start by listening to more of the instructions that direct you in their way. By rereading the suttas that you read before and new suttas that you haven't read with this new, basically fresh set of eyes, so to speak. That's what you're looking for now. Where the right view is. And then, what else you do? Well, the Buddha says what you do. Restrained virtue, seeing the danger in the slightest fault. Are you seeing the danger in the slightest fault? Is that the context in your mind that you invest effort to maintain throughout the day? Is it? Because, by the way, there is no meditation without Sila. So even if you disregard everything I say about techniques, if you get offended or whatever else, doesn't matter. Ask yourself, whatever technique you're doing, is your Sila impeccable underneath it? Or is your Sila good enough so by your own measure so that you can go and develop your perfect technique? Because there is no meditation without full restraint of the senses. So do you spend your day restrained, celibate, withdrawn? So even if we don't go into debate over techniques, has that requirement been met? If no, there is no discussion with you then. Because whatever you talk about meditation, it's not what meditation is. Because you have no basis for it. It's basically like when the Buddha said to the monk who was asked about what is the pleasure of being withdrawn from sensuality, and this monk couldn't quite explain, and the Buddha said, well, if you fully understood it, the similes that you haven't heard before, they would have occurred to you. And it said, imagine you come with a man to the bottom of the hill, you climb to the top of the hill, he stays at the bottom, and you tell him, oh dear friend, the view from this top of the hill, it's immeasurable. I mean, I can see the valleys and oceans and forests, it's just heavenly. And the man at the bottom turns around and all he sees is tree trunks. And he says, no, I disagree, I don't see that. And then if this man had compassion for the man at the bottom, he would come down the hill, grab him by the arm, drag him up the hill, and see for yourself. And if the simile was being withdrawn from sensuality, you see for yourself. But most people are like the man at the bottom. They argue the view from the top, while they're still deep down in the forest of sensuality. Because that in itself is already a form of meditation, sense restraint throughout the day. You cannot possibly do that without having developed proper imperturbable mindfulness. And what is imperturbable mindfulness other than composed mindfulness, other than Samadhi, literally composure, keeping it together.
So, and that's something you can actually get your mind around, so to speak.
Oh,
don't do anything wrong.
Yeah.
That's,
And always be aware at the corner of your eye, that background in your mind. So I'm about to do this, I'm doing this, I'm doing the environment I'm in, am I heading towards the unwholesome or wholesome? If unwholesome, make the effort, rein yourself in, pull yourself out.
So
that's where the work is done.
Yeah. So when I said, am I doing anything wrong, or am I going to do anything wrong? Is there any unwholesome intentions here?
Yeah.
But that requires me to have a specific way of being aware.
Yeah. Being aware of the context.
Yeah.
That's what I keep saying. And by the way, can you, if all you do is concentrate what's in front of you, your intentions will become invisible to you more than they already are. Can never attend your intention. Because the only reason you're attending things is because you intended to do so. Intention is always in the background. Intention is always the state of mind. That's the whole connection between cetana and chitta, etymologically speaking. Intention and the mind.
So you want to be aware of your intention.
Exactly. And that's not something you can concentrate on.
Yeah.
That's only something you can know as it's there enduring, as the current context of your experience.
Yeah. So this type of awareness, of being able to be aware of your intentions behind your actions, it's a kind of basic tool for a person that's going to be wholesome or responsible person.
Yeah. It's the first step. That's being self-aware perpetually.
Being self-aware.
So is your practice of concentration, again in inverted commas, whatever it is that improving that self-awareness that you have throughout the day, or is it making you completely sort of lapse and go in a state of unawareness? Because when the Buddha described how Sariputta went through all the jhanas, he described that every single one of those jhanas, the most refined ones, were fully understood, fully known, mindfulness was clear as a day throughout it. So that can be another criteria. If you can't quite shake off your doing the Anapanasati or something, well, make sure your self-awareness is not compromised. Knowingly he breathes in, knowingly he breathes out. So are you aware even more of your current situation when you're doing your technique, method of meditation, or basically the world is shut out?
Are you
exactly.
narrow
Well,
mind.
no, that's where it comes down. I said that before. Yeah, one-pointedness. But is it one wide point that includes everything, or one narrow point that shuts everything out? And when I read like most of the contemporary instructions, it was always about the direction of shutting everything else out.
So
That's why it goes hand in hand with stop thinking, too much thinking, just focus, just concentrate, repeat the mantra, concentrate, become basically a thoughtless, half asleep.
doing this thing,
Just do it repetitively until you go into that mental stupor, so to speak.
So I want to develop right view, and I start restraining the senses.
Seeing the danger in the slightest fault. Restraining the senses will already make you wakeful, mindful, and alert, and that's already samadhi to begin with. And then, within that, like when that's not taking too much of your energy, when the mind is established, when, as Bruce said, when mind is pliable and not lighter and not heavy, then you could read the suttas, take other things that in your mind need to be understood. What is suffering? What is the origin of suffering? What is the basically any aspect of the suttas they will be talking about? What is anicca? What is dukkha? What is, like, understand it, make the effort within that properly developed basis of sila, sense restraint, mindfulness, and samadhi. So you are doing your wisdom practice now. So am I trying to understand, or am I watching my nostrils because I'm basically tired of trying to understand? And yes, sometimes you might be tired of trying to understand. That's what I mean. It will be taking too much effort. Then okay, stop it. But that doesn't mean you stop your sense restraint, control of your senses, and daily mindfulness. You don't stop your samadhi. You don't stop your self-awareness. So yeah, you don't have to actively, if you cannot. But it doesn't mean, but now I am justified in going into the state of oblivion or forgetting about myself. That's like what we spoke in that other talk. I forgot the title. Like, you never rest. Doesn't mean you always work. Just simply means you refuse, basically. Even when you don't work, you refuse to give in to that distraction and self-delusion where you forget about yourself. So in that sense, you're always diligent. So you never rest, yet that type of basically effort is effortless. It doesn't tire you out. Distraction tires you out. Sensuality tires you out. Misguided effort tires you out. Mindfulness, done rightly, it's effortless, and you can't have too much of it, as the Buddha would say. So another thing is you could reevaluate when there are certain practices that you find helpful. Like, what is helpful to me? What is the helpfulness aspect of those practices? What is my measure for helpfulness? What's my criteria? What's my value? Is it how it makes me feel? Or do I see it like genuinely supporting my sense restraint, composure, clarity of mindfulness in a day-to-day life? Or I don't quite see it. And if you don't make the effort to see it in itself, it cannot present itself to you. You need to do it.
So how does this seeing the danger in the slightest fault, sense restraint, relate to yoniso manasikara?
Well, it's that, where I said that first step, in having the knowledge of the context and not being absorbed in the object of your concentration or attention. Knowing where your intentions are. That's already the beginning of yoniso. Knowing where your intentions are enduring. Because they are there, enduring. So, knowing the background. Discerning the peripheral. That's pretty much it. And that's why if you practice that, you will get to see the sign of your mind. The more clear seeing of your intentions you are, Chetana, the clearer Chitta will become outlined.
And the clearer the setup is.
What setup?
The framework of experience.
Well, that's what the mind is.
Yeah. So that's what I mean. The setup or
Chitta.
the way things are situated.
Yeah, and that's determined basically pretty much by the state of the mind. That's why the mind is the forerunner.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why the prerequisite for the right view is that, grasping the sign of your mind. The outlines of your mind, seeing it for what it is, enduring there. Not abstractly, not as a speculative thought, not as a mystical experience at the end of your concentration effort. No, right there and then, my mind is such, and you see it. You see the suchness of it. And you don't interfere with it.
Mm-hmm.
The state of
Yeah.
mind
Mm-hmm.
is first. That you, by the way, did not create. You're subjected to it in the same sense we're subjected to this weather. It comes and goes. It arises, it ceases. It increases, it decreases. It doesn't matter.
But
The point is,
Mm.
for somebody who doesn't see sign of their mind, doesn't see the mind in suchness as enduring, elated mind is elated mind, depressed mind is depressed mind, happy mind is happy mind, as Anapanasati said, they put themselves first. So it's I own this mind. This mind is mine. And that's why you suffer. When the mind that you don't want basically is directing in the direction that it's unpleasant. And you're being influenced and pressured and affected by the unpleasant state of mind. By not as lofty as you want it to be, not as light as you want it to be, not as motivated as you want it to be. But if you were to just see mind for what it is, you would not be affected by it. It's only because you keep implicitly sort of entertaining the notion of ownership of it.
So once you are familiar with that order,
Well,
or
that's,
that
yeah,
seeing
so
the mind,
you need to cultivate it. It's not like one and done deal. Like you see it once and it's done, finished. You see it once and you have to then keep restoring the order, because your habits, your asavas will keep sort of washing your way away from that order into the wrong order, so to speak. Same like going against the stream, you have to sort of persist in an even application of effort to go against the stream until you reach the end of that stream. If your effort lapses, the stream will pick you up and drag you down again. So same with the right order, you need to sustain it. But seeing the right order on the basis of seeing your mind in its suchness is the beginning towards the right view. And that's what the right view is. Seeing the right order. Knowing what comes first. That's why those people who got the right view after Buddha would speak, it's like, oh, it's amazing. It's like Master Gautama putting first that which was second, and putting second that which was first. Putting that which was upside down, putting down, and that which was down, putting up. Fixing it.
turning upright, which is upside
Yeah.
down.
And that's why you would know now what to do. Sustain, protect, and develop that order, which is the Noble Eightfold Path. Don't cause the disorder through lust, aversion, distraction, through intentions based on lust, aversion, and distraction. Abstain from it, and disorder will become solidified.
So where does then Anapanasati come in?
Well, Anapanasati comes into for somebody who understood the right order, and they want to develop the further calmness of the mind, the further non-perturbability of their mindfulness, because that's what Anapanasati fortifies your satipathanas.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
They are brought to fulfillment through your. So it's basically just doing the same practice of mindfulness of satipatthana, just doing it on the level of your breath. That's it. That's what Anapanasati is. It's the same practice, just instead of going up and down and about, you just sit still and you do it within this. But it's the same practice. That's what Buddha said. When that body that's there, when you are mindful of your breath, is body that stands for the body. Body among bodies, how it's translated. And you're mindful of that body correctly means you're seeing the characteristics of that body correctly. The suchness of it. Without your ownership, without your interference. You stay with that sight long enough, any notion of ownership and interference will fade away. Any notion of lust will fade away. Any notion of appropriation will fade away.
Yeah, that Satipatthana and Anapanasati is based upon this prerequisite. It should be done on this prerequisite of seeing the mind
Well, regardless of
the right
which
order.
concentration you do, it's all about fortifying your mindfulness. The mindfulness that you supposedly have before your concentration. If you read the suttas, you'll see basically that mindfulness is that which gets developed to the extent necessary for the final knowledge. Either through sharp wisdom, either through sense restraint, determination, and so on, samadhi. Any form of samadhi, it's basically done rightly, it's the samadhi that fortifies your mindfulness. The clarity of your recollection and your awareness. Self-awareness, yeah. So you ask yourself, with your current practice of meditation, is your concentration fortifying your day-to-day mindfulness, or is it completely opposite direction of it? Like you emerge from your concentration and now you start making the effort to be mindful and be present and be aware of your intentions. Well, that's what your samadhi should be fortifying, not something else. Whether it's vipassana, whether it's samadhi, either way basically you're developing. One brings the other. Whether you're making effort actively to understand or just through fortifying your mindfulness without active contemplation, you're developing the same understanding. But, with introduction of more and more commentaries and interpretations and obviously 2.5 millennia, now it's like this whole view of, oh, this is my study, this is my formal practice, my mantra, my this, and you have no idea how any of that relates. You just hope that all these things that make you feel good, make you feel Buddhist and a committed practitioner, will somehow result in your enlightenment. It's no different into when martial arts back in the day originated in the form of self-defense or during the wartime, but then couple of millennia they got so mystified, and now people have these hollow forms, doing these hollow forms, unable to even defend themselves. There's no practical value of it. So that's it. Formal meditation today is completely the opposite of your self-defense that you would apply in a day, which is sense restraint and your mindfulness and your awareness of your intentions. So why do you do it then? Why don't you just find a self-defense class that will teach you self-defense, as opposed to venerating some 2 millennia old tradition that's divorced from practicality, and then go and have to do the actual self-defense. So that's what I mean. Yeah, do your samadhi as much as you want, but do it in a sense that you can sustain it throughout your day, even when you're not sitting in your protected, safe environment. That's the samadhi you should cultivate. That's the samadhi that's at least closer to make you imperturbable. Eventually, your mindfulness imperturbable. Not now I am justified in basically shutting everything else out and engaging in my practice of concentration to calm myself down. But then when I re-emerge from my formal practice, now I have to restart my mindfulness, my sense restraint, and remind myself of the values I need to maintain throughout the day as a form of self-defense. That's not the samadhi then you should be cultivating. As simple as that. Go straight, cultivate that which will basically develop further that which you want to develop. So do a meditation, as I said, that you can then spread throughout your day, even when you're not formally sitting. So then there should be no difference between formal and informal meditation.
It's the same thing.
It's the same thing.
Your body's just doing
and the Buddha
different.
says so many times, he establishes his mind in jhana, the perfect context, withdrawn from sensuality, imperturbable, and then whether he sits, eats, goes to toilet, extends his arm, whatever he does is divine, because the state of his mind is divine. Second jhana, third jhana, same. So there you go. Establish your mind in jhana and then go about and see how long your jhana will last. So that, again, if you don't take anything I say, well, this should at least, you could reason that this is the right thing to do. So even if you disagree with everything else, the advice that your meditation should basically, theoretically, be sustainable throughout your day, throughout your time, and should certainly should be improving your mindfulness and everything else. That is a valid, you cannot find fault with that. So if you don't take anything else I say, well, at least use this and revise your meditation practice. And by the way, it doesn't matter, I must find out how this teacher is wrong. That's all irrelevant. What's relevant is why you are doing it for yourself. Are you aware of the motives behind and how you're doing it? What's your, as I said, implication of the method behind? Are you hoping it will magically result or protect you or whatever else by some sort of lofty development as a product of it, but do you see it? No. Are you losing your self-awareness when you're practicing it, or are you increasing your self-awareness even when you stop practicing it on account of your previous practice? Are your intentions clearer to spot as a result of your samadhi practice beforehand, or you have to redo the same effort every time? You can't find fault with that, because that's exactly what the Buddha was saying. You should always know what you're doing, why you're doing, and abstain from doing unwholesome and cultivate wholesome. You should never lose that context at the back of your mind. So, no amount of samadhi and concentration is justifiable to take you away from that. And then you realize, oh yeah, quite the opposite. Samadhi and concentration should be bringing you even closer to knowing those things. So is your samadhi bringing you closer to knowing the states of your mind, knowing your intention behind actions when you're not sitting and meditating?
Continuously.
How continuous that practice is, how continuously can you do it? Or you can only do it when you're in a protected environment.
Right.
So if you are overdoing your concentration with this new value of finding the common ground that you can sustain, whether formal or informal, it will basically pull you out of your overdoing extent, so to speak. If you were overdoing it before, now when you realize, oh, but I should be able to sustain it throughout the day, you will step back from that overly concentrated absorb where you lose the sight of your situation. And when you're pulled back into that, okay, so that's the extent I can practice these calming techniques and so on without overcommitting. And actually, even when I'm not end up sitting and meditating, I can still sustain the same self-awareness. So that's composure, literally, keeping it together. But you wouldn't say to somebody, oh, you can keep things together when you shut everybody out, lock yourself inside, spend 3 hours preparing, and then no, means you are quite precious. The one who amidst of things falling apart keeps it together is the one who can keep it together, is the one who has samadhi. Even in colloquial terms. Hey, keep it together, man. When people say that.
Yes, I can keep it together as long as I'm shut in my room.
Which means like, so it's only a relative, you're not really keeping it together.
Yeah.
You want to keep it together regardless of the circumstances. That is the imperturbable samadhi. The unshakable mindfulness. That's it. So that single-handedly will make you stop overthinking about methods and techniques, because it's irrelevant actually. You realize, do I watch my nostrils for 4 seconds or 8 seconds? That only matters to somebody who hopes that is magical product. A result of their concentration, mystical result basically, that will be equated with knowledge and wisdom and liberation. No. So you realize most of it doesn't matter. What matters is you making the effort to sustain your mindfulness in controlled environment and less controlled environment. In formal environment or informal environment. Same mindfulness. Because it's the same mind, by the way.
Same awareness, full alert.
Yeah.
And aware.
Yeah. So if you can only sustain it in a protected environment, okay, but you recognize it. Okay, so it's quite dependent on certain circumstances, which means if those circumstances change, my mindfulness will go, and I better make further effort to uproot that dependence. Otherwise, if I'm not able to meet my requirements, I will fall apart. And then my sense restraint will suffer, my Sila will suffer, and everything else will suffer.